will entail. So we are meeting with the Allstate people to get a more clear-cut fee structure for site reviews. You know, if it fits into this size category, the structure, the fee will be this. So we're meeting with them. We've still got to figure that out. That's to be determined on the fee schedule still. The finance committee had some conversations about the credit card convenience fees and whether we should have that on the fee schedule or not. And so we reached out to Lindsay and she said that we should, that we just need to put that little blurb that we have in there that says all electronic payment convenience fees are charged by the provider and not included in the City of Odessa payment system. So these are the fees that we're under contract for. And if those change, we'll need to update the fee schedule. Keeping in mind that updating the fee schedule is part of the annual budget every year. Do I think this is perfect? No, I'm not unrealistic. I don't think it's gonna solve every single problem we have. Do I think it's a lot better than where we're at today? Yes. I'm certain there's gonna be things that we're going to go, oh, well, maybe we should do this different or we should have done that different, but the fee schedule as presented is a more fair distribution of any fees for, especially development is what we focus on this year of passing those along. So just want to open the floor up to discussion about fee schedule to start with.
This also is for those of us that already have it signed. We automatically have it taken out. Is that charged to us as well?
Do you have an ACH?
I have, yeah.
No. That's going to continue the way it is.
Does that mean the city's losing money on that?
ACHs aren't costing us anything through our bank. We send a file to the bank and they process it to pull those ACH payments that we still have.
I have a question. I just thought of it. So, how do people pay their fees for parks and rents and basketball and all that? Credit card or
Both. We have our own software. That is, we do online and in our office.
so would I?
So these do not, the convenience fees do not apply to the parks system at all. It's completely autonomous from all of the rest of the fees that we have.
What do you guys do with your fees? You just pass them all, right? You guys ignore them?
We get charged monthly for them.
Yeah, it's part of our bank reconciliation process is to make sure that the money that comes in, goes out, all goes to the right place. Any other questions on fee structure?
On any fees? You still need to make your correction on the residential utility rate.
I thought I did.
I had planned on requesting Alderman discussion regarding the electric utility rates and also our ECA calculation at the regular meeting. So I'd like to keep that part open to discussion.
I think in all fairness, we're in the middle of a rate study for electrical rates.
Right, so I think this would be an ideal time for us to talk about. We've got time to make adjustments if we need to.
Yeah, I think we need to see what the rate study says.
Right.
And make adjustments as according at that point. I don't know that I would want to do anything different right now with what those rates look like, because I don't know what the study's going to
We'll
say.
have that in prior to the end of the budget process.
That's the plan. That's the plan. So
Next meeting would be an ideal time.
I would be. I hope. We'll see how that works out. Any other thoughts, questions, anything on the fee schedule? No, okay. We will update it with whatever we come up with our all state discussions. And then it will just be part of the final approval package when we get to that. I'm looking at the computer behind you to see if there's any possibility that we're gonna get the PowerPoint. It's like, I created a really cool PowerPoint for you. I don't know if you can see it, but it's cool.
Is it something you think we know? Us and we can-
I do have a question. This will be on the facility rentals. We had talked about concerning the food trucks sitting at the park. And we voted to not charge them. So my question just is, in thought, whatever you want to call it, is that any different than renting the building here, or? So then charging to sit there would be,
Well, I think that was kind of a part of the discussion that Bruce would have had when he met with
Right.
both sides and whether or not we should charge or should not charge. So the direction that I heard was to not charge.
Right.
Because they're already paying the business license fee like the others would pay. Like a regular business. fee. So
I think it is different. Because we're not providing them anything from the city there. Here, they're guaranteed a building that's not leaking, bathrooms, restrooms, power, utilities, we're providing them a service there. We're not guaranteeing them that they don't have a pothole to park in. We're just guaranteeing that they can park there. We're not giving them anything as a city. I think that's where the difference is. If they want to use power, then yes, they need to get a special use permit, sign up for the power and pay for the power. That's what I'm told the farmers market does for theirs. They pay a special permit for it and they use the power and they pay for it. It's part of their fee.
there's not necessarily a special, they don't have to pay for the special event permit, but that's how they kind of book the space and then they do have to pay for their power that they use.
Now, if a food truck plugging in the power, I would definitely agree, yes, you need to pay for that power.
I guess my question is, it's not just food trucks, but even the farmers. Because we have talked about how we're losing money on some of these fees. Trying to gouge anybody, but I'm just saying, is this something that could?
Well, we just had a really intensive discussion on food trucks. And I don't know that we want to open that back up again. The community building fees. Were they reviewed last year with all the park fees? They were separate from that, okay. Okay. I don't know, what do you guys want to do?
I remember the discussion being that, that with the other buildings, giving up to be charged for, there is a cost to the city. There's really not a maintenance or a cost down at the other. I think that's why the maintenance is not charged, but if I'm remembering. Not to say that there could never be, but I think that's right now. And then also the maintenance or the time involved in how's that gonna get booked and who's gonna check on if they're paying and up on a Sunday and you know, that whole logistics of it too, so.
You know, I'm really always pretty open and blunt with y'all. I think the fee structure changes that we've proposed here are the ones that can make us stop losing the most money. I think that, like I said, there's always gonna be what ifs and what fors and how should we change it moving forward. But I think this is a good starting point for us for this year.
Would I agree with that?
Okay, I have emailed you guys all a PDF of the PowerPoint that we're gonna go through. So we can just kind of hit the highlights and go into any details. Tonight, we're working on revenue projections, fund balance discussions, and personnel services and the recommendations for that. So water, wastewater, electric, those rates are all based on the calculation that's laid out in the ordinance that says this is how we adjust those each year. And do you guys have your, you don't have one, do you?
No, look at Mickey.
Okay, the rates for those utilities are in your fee schedule. With the exception of my fat finger for the electric rate, which should be 0.0987, not 0.987. And I will get that fixed on this. Under the electric usage rates on. But anyway, we have increased meter numbers across the board since last year. So that is increasing our revenues. There's a slight uptick in the revenue based on that, and then your base rate adjustment for water. The wastewater base rate will always be the same thing. We do have the SIRA on that, and it has reduced from 964 to 945 for next year. Just know that from a debt service perspective, wastewater, we are starting to pay some principal on some of the bonds that we have only been paying interest on. So we will have more outlay for that this year. And then the electric utility, we're going to continue those discussions as that rate study comes in, but we went ahead with the standard adjustment being what we've put in as our projections for them.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So you've got. Never mind. That's the wrong question.
I love it when you
Yep.
have questions like that, Paul.
Yep.
From a general fund revenue standpoint, real estate taxes are gonna increase a little bit over 11%. And that is because of the increased valuation. What we've done on real estate taxes has gone back over the last 6 years and figured what the average collected based on the valuation for that year is. And that average has been 0.715 or 0.716 the last 6 years. So I went with 0.715 as our factor for that. And we are increasing our real estate. We have more houses in town. We have more commercial development. It just stands to reason that that's gonna go up. Personal property taxes, they're gonna go up just a little over 5% in the revenue projections, just because of current year actuals projections. We're gonna remain flat in county use tax and county sales tax. As you know, the county is having some financial difficulties, and they're gonna propose to put on their ballot language for April to recapture the money from their use tax that has been coming to the cities and other departments, and who knows what's gonna happen. I don't have that crystal ball, so we're not planning really any adjustments to that.
One of the sales tax or one of the property tax proposals that I read at Jeff City is to shift things to a sales tax. And the sales tax, additional sales tax that cities may receive would kick in a Hancock adjustment to the property tax rates. So if that passes, that would impact that. Who knows? I like the county, who knows what the impact would be, and if it would happen, but
It's definitely something to be cognizant of and keep an eye on. I don't know that the state's tax adjustment is going to happen quickly. I think it's a big item for them to chew off and try to figure out, and I don't know that it'll happen in this legislative session, but they are trying to do something.
I do have a question.
Mhm.
I thought I knew the answer, but I haven't. Don't we have an ordinance that says we can't raise our base rates over 2.5% per year?
3%.
Is it 3? Okay, because these are 3. And then,
Okay. Last chance.
we can-
Okay. The rest of our taxes, motor fuel tax is going up just a little bit. Evidently more people are driving, buying more gas, so that tax is going up. It is set to adjust 1.5% each year anyway. Sorry, got a message in here. City sales tax, we left it at a 2% increase based on just regular trends. We did have a conversation with Higginsville about the impact that Taco Bell had on their sales tax, and do anticipate that being a really positive impact for us, that we did not include those projections in here because we don't know when they'll open and what their actual source will be. But we're very hopeful that they are very successful and help with that. Transient guest tax, evidently a lot more people are staying at the hotel over the last couple of years too. So that we've increased a little bit, and then we'll leave city stickers. Other revenue sources, merchant licenses, we've got a 12.5% increase based on what we've increased this year, and then the projections from that. 2 years ago, we switched softwares to do all of the merchant licensing through the cloud permit software, and that was quite an adjustment for our staff and our businesses both. We're getting the hang of it. Businesses are getting the hang of it. It went much smoother this year than it did that first year. Tracy, our accounts payable clerk, is taking over business licenses as of the first of this year, taking that off of Karen's plate. She's doing backflips, and you don't want to see that, but
pay money to see her do it.
What? Might hurt myself.
yeah.
That's what the money's for.
Jenny is doing a really good job of, whenever people are pulling permits, making sure those people have the business licenses that they need. So that's just a really great example of staff working together to move things in the right direction. We're excited about that.
did our rate increase from last year to this year? So it's the same rate, but we've had a 12% increase in the number
No,
of licenses.
we changed it to 60 last April,
60. What was it?
or was it the April?
No, I think it was the year before,
2 years.
but we've had an influx of business license.
This is our second year of it being $60.
And through January, our sales tax year over year increased 1.45%, I think is what the number was. So we're getting more businesses, they're just not sales tax collecting businesses.
A lot of, we're seeing a lot of construction types of businesses. As far as, a plumber or an electrician or those trade folks. We're seeing a lot of those. So yeah, that's good. We have more people doing things here. Building permits, we anticipate a 50% increase in those. That is based on the fee schedule changes. And so I think that should make a dramatic increase in trying to keep our building permits at the point where they're covering the expenses they need to be covering in that community development side. Everything else, animal impounds, we did a pretty significant decrease on, but that whole line item's like $2,500, so it's not making a huge impact, even though it's a large percent in that. And school resource officer income should increase a little bit because of salaries and the reimbursements for that, so that's looking good. Last year was the first year for the special duty reimbursement. That is the contract we have with the First Baptist Church to provide church security on Sundays and Wednesdays. We put 17,000 last year in the budget. We're gonna lower that to 16,000 just after having a year under our belt and really seeing what their usage needs to be. So, any questions on revenue projections? Any thoughts? Okay, I want to put a plug in while we're on this piece of the conversation that I feel like we're making great strides in the revenue, the global. When we look at that overall, how are we looking at things moving forward? I think we're making really great strides. I think we've got an amazing team built now that is really paying attention to all of the little details and understands how things tie together. We have a good economic development forecast moving forward, so I anticipate that overall the revenues will, I think when we sit here next year and have the same conversation, that it's going to continue to be a better conversation. I really do. Next on my slide is personnel projections. We are in the middle of the salary study. And we really pushed them and we wanted them to have everything so we could come and say, here's what we need to know, how you want to implement the compensation differences that we have. They've given us some preliminary numbers, but we don't have the whole picture yet. And so Sean and I have talked pretty extensively about this. What we are going to recommend is that for the beginning of this budget cycle, we stay with our standard across the board salary increase. And then once we get the full compensation study back and have a way that we can actually deliver that and have realistic, I mean, I could have guessed at numbers. I could have thrown some stuff together but I don't sleep at night if I do that. So I don't think that's the way to do business. So what we're going to propose is that we have the 5% salary increase. I believe last year we did a 6% increase. We've budgeted for a 6% increase in health, dental, and vision costs. We're getting early indications that that may or may not happen. And if it does happen, it may be less than that 6%. So we're super excited about the potential that that may come in under what we're estimating it to be. We pay Missouri Loggers is the retirement system, and you guys are all familiar with that. But we pay 9.2% for all general employees and 9.4% for police. And then we pay 75% of our employees' health insurance. And then their dental and vision is covered up.
Which I do think the loggers went up, didn't it?
April, we'll get notice in April.
We just don't know what that is yet.
But even from previous budget, this is an increased number.
Yeah, it'll be an increase number. I just don't know what that is. I can't guess either.
So conversations about personnel services and what we should do with that.
When will they have their report to us?
Great question.
We don't have a specific date. I think where we are on the salary study is, like you're saying, like we can plug the numbers in and just go with it. These are the numbers and that's what it is. But when you look at the impact that this has on our 45 employees, like we want to make sure that we do it right. We communicate with them, we have them involved, and that they're a part of the process every step of the way. And that's the part that we haven't accomplished with PayPoint, is figuring out, one, how to phase out the impact, because we cannot afford to fix the entire problem in 1 year. But what we need to try to determine is how to implement something in a more than 1 year timeline. And that's going to take us working a little bit more closely with PayPoint, but most importantly, I didn't feel comfortable just saying, here, employees, this is what the number is. You know, we don't have a way to achieve it yet, but this is what it is. This is your new salary. We want to make sure that they're involved and we have a legitimate communications plan before we hit go on the results. So
I'd like to see the preliminary information they've shared. Making the decision whether or not to go with 5% and something later.
Okay. Okay.
They have something, we know it's preliminary, we don't have to draft.
Okay, it'll probably have to be at a high level, like either fund level or department level, because we have multiple departments of one. And if I make that a public document, then that individual person's salary is then publicized and talked about openly. So we're trying to preserve some confidentiality in each of our employees' salaries as well.
But you said it was 6% last year.
Sure, their report doesn't tell us what we need to pay each individual.
It does right now. It does right now. That's why we weren't ready to put it out yet. Their first draft has each and every position's impact.
And I think that's what we wanted, but I get why we want, and I don't think that any of us anticipated that it would be a one and done, here's what it is.
Right.
It would be like, we don't even know if there's enough money.
Right, exactly.
Phase it in, or however that works.
And that's what we're trying to determine, is how best to phase it in. We at least want to be able to propose some type of implementation plan to you. And we just haven't gotten that far from the results that they've provided. I mean, it is in draft form right now, and very much so a raw report.
So they're sticking with their timeline and they're moving along.
They are. Yeah, they were able to get the first draft before the deadline. We'll continue to work on it, and we'll, kind of mend as we get more information and get closer to end result. But
I really want to look at the projection.
yeah,
We can say, okay, it's gonna be X number of dollars if we split it over 2 or 3 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But moving forward with cost of living adjustments, and we don't have that yet. But
how do we fold in this, lump sum number that we have now? How do we fold that in, and what is it going to do to each fund for the next at least 3 years? Because the goal is to be able to implement what we have, this, large number, implement that into our operating budget. We can't just plug it into the operating budget today. So we're trying to work towards that. It's just not ready yet. We haven't got that far.
we'll get there. Probably not gonna be like.
And I'm thinking like Bruce, so when I think about a salary study and the results, I would anticipate seeing the raw stuff along with you guys. Right? I don't know how to do that.
right? That, my best,
Since it's HR, I mean, I'm just asking.
I can check with our,
It's a legal question.
yeah, I can check and see.
Saying you can't share with us their study because it's protected.
It's not protected, it's just ethically, that's what I would prefer to do.
Okay?
It's not protected in any way.
But so does that mean things that are sent out to us not in a closed session is public record?
Yes,
So I can
definitely.
share your proposed contract to anybody out there right now.
Yes. I mean, it's a closed session item. That was a handout for closed session for tonight. But after it's approved, yes.
I don't know how that makes a difference providing it before a meeting or after. the meeting.
It's a handout for the closed session agenda. But in theory, after it's voted on in closed session, it's public.
I understand that part, but
Well, in regards to the salary schedule, I just think and I think we're agreeing there's a lot more information that we've got to put together to
Right,
decide.
right. And that involves you all in that process. I understand that.
Yeah, I'm just not happy with this 5% thing. Yeah, I know there's a study. But it seems like our city looks at that. 5% just seems like a slap in the face, especially when they got sick last year.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
That's fair.
I realize. Can't just go out and pick money off the tree.
Mhm. Well, and last year we proposed 5%, and then once we got confirmation that the insurance wasn't increasing, we moved it to 6%. So that, because that helps, that's a savings for us.
I just.
Yeah, that's something we could consider, because I know we get we don't have the confirmation yet for the health benefits, but we get it before the budget's approved.
Something that's calculated, or are we trying to match the percentage of growth in salaries?
So the 5% that's proposed is a COLA increase for each employee across the board.
Based on
Mhm.
like social.
Based on what we're able to allow within our budget.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm. But the salary study, what is more of a global market study to determine what each position needs to be or needs to increase by to get to the 50th percentile of the 20-some cities that we compared ourselves against.
so department heads, do we do any performance reviews individually with anybody?
We do.
Does anybody get individual performance incentive increases, or did we just get 5%? Whether you earn it?
As of right now, we just do the COLA increase, but each employee receives a performance evaluation each year.
No incentive to do better the next year.
No merit.
Not that we have anybody that doesn't deserve it. I agree with Mickey. But I think we need to, I think that's a concern I have, because we have high performers that are doing well.
Mhm.
We need to make sure we compensate them for it. So thank you. You're doing a great job.
Well, I will get you like the departmental and the fund impacts of what the salary recommendations are, and I think we can easily show where those 50th percentile pieces are. We'll just have to figure out how to not call out specific employees with it. And then we can talk about it again next month, or in
Mhm.
2 weeks as a budget workshop, if that's okay.
Where are we coming up with 5% total?
I guess that was kind of my question too.
That's old people can have a 2.8% total increase on their social security.
Mhm.
I think it's just been a historical amount that the city of Odessa has provided.
So it's not really a total increase. It's just the 5% plug that we've always used.
Yeah, and it's been based off of what our operational budget can allow. So there's been years in the past that it's been 3%, there's been years of 5%, there's been years of 6%. Based on what we can fit into the budget.
And the study will help us understand our city, our location, our size compared to other cities.
Yes.
Correct.
So there's really three parts to pay. COLA. How much we're behind what people jobs really should pay. And performance pay.
Mhm.
So can we look at this in dividing it up in those three parts? And maybe not all this year.
That was my first
But
thought.
I mean, kind of work towards that
Yes.
success over a number of years.
Yes, it's definitely something that we've been wanting to work towards. Just haven't been able to get there yet. So I think if you would allow us another year to get there, because I wanted to do it last year. So if you'll allow us at least one more year to get to a merit-based salary increase, that would be preferable. I know we don't have the capacity to implement something like that in the next 2 months.
I know that's one complaint I heard a lot last year was, I didn't get a 6% COLA.
Mhm.
So what we're learning now is that's probably not a COLA that everyone got. That's a combination of a lot of things. So COLA is a valid increase. Let's divide it out.
When we're talking about the projections, that's one of the things that I'm taking into consideration in the projection worksheet that I'm building out is that CPI and then a merit, and we're moving down that train. I can't do that and get the rest of the budget figured out in the next 6 weeks.
During that whole merit evaluation and things like that. I've been involved in a workshop for a work group on that, and especially with government employees as a whole, in the world. Along some.
And like, so we want to do it right. We don't want to just throw something at the wall and hope it sticks and think it's going to be better down the road. We want to do things the way that they really need to be done.
Are you guys talking about like equity of the merit increase?
Or even how to determine
Proper scale.
the scale, who gets it on.
I have done actually quite a bit of research into it, and I've not found any city that can arguably say that they have a equitable merit increase that works well. So they have the best they can get to, the closest they could get to, but nothing that is, everybody is happy with it and it's perfect. Yeah. I don't know if it exists.
I think the whole merit thing too. I hate to call it a can of worms, Joe. Okay. So I have 32 people that I have to answer for. I have some. I have one. I have this one. Is he a rock star? No. Will he ever be a rock star? No. Does he show up every day? Yes. Is he the best? He is the best person to let you know if he's going to be late, if he's not going to come in, whatever.
He's reliable.
He's very reliable. He comes in, he does his job. Then you get into, I have a principal at one of my schools who has a brand new young lady. Last week was her second week. And she's already going, she's not doing good with me. And she's only been there 2 weeks. So Why I say this can be a can of worms, how it's all sorts of different factors. But this can also be a turn into I like you, but I don't like that person. Very good. And you know, saying people shouldn't be rewarded to do an outstanding job, but there's a lot that goes into it.
That's why I would suppose that, any merit base would need to have, be based on some concrete tangibles.
Correct. Has to be objective.
Yeah.
Measurable. Which takes time and work. A lot invested in it.
Okay. We're ready to talk fund balances?
Yep. Is that the end of your slides?
Well, you know, they're all cut off, so I'm now,
Well, you got,
Bring it up.
you were on benefits changes.
okay.
You still have some more to go.
Okay. Like I said, we think that we're budgeting for a 6% health insurance increase. Along with that, the health savings account, the deductible for the folks that take that health savings health plan will be increasing. So we have been looking at matching that. Like we did last year, we matched the $1,650 that was the deductible. We upfront funded that for those folks that have the HSA. So that will increase to $1,700 and $3,400. Depending on whether it's just the employee or if it's employee, spouse, kids, the whole 9 yards. So
And that's a for sure.
yeah,
Oh.
that one we know is a.
Yeah.
If we move into the next slide, we get the comparison by department.
The next slide cut off.
Yeah, that's why I was pulling this up. So,
Oh my God.
so if everybody has a pen, we're gonna write numbers in. I said-
Technology and things are
Camping.
not on our side today.
Building, I'm convinced. This was all fun. I loved it here.
Forward that to them.
Yeah, we'll get those updated,
I
but
think it put, like-
Oh, it just pushed it. No, I don't think so.
Oh, no.
I think it just cut those all off.
You're
Maybe I used
when
to,
converted
I
it,
don't know.
so I will send it to you again. The differences because instead of a column and a half, which what you see on your spreadsheet that's printed, there's actually 3 columns. So we're gonna talk about the difference columns, so you can jot those numbers down. From the administration line, the difference is $24,934. The police line is $111,435. That does include the addition of a police detective, which, Josh, do you want to speak to the need for that?
Sorry, I wasn't prepared.
Okay, that's fine.
But I mean, I can,
Are these expenses or are these reserve balance?
No, we're talking expenses still on the personnel. The municipal courts, 1545. Streets is 19,433, and community development is 3,096. The only staffing.
Community development's fine.
Yeah, it stops at streets.
Oh,
The
Lord.
number on it up. Yeah.
3,096.
I don't know. Maybe I sent Tracy the wrong version. I
It's
don't
all
know.
good.
I tried.
I will turn this into a PDF and we'll try again to get it to them. Okay, so then on the next page, you've got electric. The difference is $1,262. And I wanted to point out why that is such a small difference. We had a long-term seasoned journeyman lineman who retired in this past budget cycle. He was making significantly more than the less tenured journeyman that we have replaced him with. Same thing, we lost an apprentice that would have been a year 3 apprentice, and we've replaced that with a year 2 apprentice. So the electric department is fully staffed now, but fully staffed at a reductive rate from what we had budgeted last year.
What was that number again?
$1,262.
This obviously excludes electricity purchased. That's like $4 million.
This is personnel cost.
Personnel costs. right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's where we're on personnel cost. And this is if we did the 5% plus the insurance increases that we're anticipating.
This doesn't include any other departmental costs.
This is just personnel that we're talking about at this point.
So basically what you're sharing with us is the second column minus the first column.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
With the whole second column included there. I'll put it back out. Wastewater, $14,204. Parks. General is $83.34. Swimming pool is $11.96. Programs is $19.57 and concessions is $900. Some notes all the way across the board. We are doing a deep dive in our work comp cost and making sure that every employee is categorized with what their job role really is. And I'm going to give you a for instance. We have park concessions, swimming pool concession people. We've been paying swimming pool rates for them. But as we deep dive into that, none of them are lifeguards, none of them are doing anything other than selling hot dogs. So we need to be able to charge a lesser rate, pay a lesser rate on that. So Karen and I are working through every employee to make sure they're in the proper categories, and I think we'll see some adjustments there. That it will make some differences for us. The other thing is minimum wage did increase January 1st. It was $13.75 and it's now $15. So all of our part-time parks people that were making $13.75 or so are going to get a bump. So we're going to see an increase in that budget for sure because of the minimum wage increase.
Okay, water, completely skipped water.
$5,970.
Yeah, total all the work.
Not that much department stuff.
You sure it counts?
The next, I'm gonna send this to you. It's all gonna be there. I promise it. I'm gonna look at it before I email it next time. Also included is a proposed increase for our elected body of the 5%. It's my understanding that you guys have not had an increase for a while.
My bank account is really showing up.
I'm telling you that $628 difference is gonna impact y'all. So.
He's like, bonus.
This will be like $4.
So any questions, thoughts?
So what are we supposed to put out here by that?
For the $628 is the difference for the elected.
628?
Yes. That's a 5% increase to be in line with the 5% that we discussed for staff. I will send you all of these again. where you can actually see all of the numbers and see the full impact.
That's maybe my fault. I emailed the presentation to Tracy and I might have grabbed the wrong version. I don't
Okay.
know.
Let's just go back.
You guys tried.
We did. We have this new audio, visual, all of the things. And we couldn't get it to stream, right? And so we had the folks come here one day last week. We sat down, we said, what are we doing wrong? And come to find out, one of the components that they used for making this all work together was bad. And so-
Brand new
brand
and
new
bad.
component, but it was bad. So they fixed a workaround for us so we could get through tonight. It did not work. So-
And
They-
and now the TV's not working.
Yeah, they promised us that at our February 9th meeting, all of this technology is gonna work. This, I was so impressed with our presentation.
So we're bringing it back to
Yeah.
2025 with printed slides. Okay, fund balance analysis and sidewalk budget discussion. Is there any other workshop one questions or personnel questions, revenue? Anything else before we move on? Okay, we will continue to work on personnel. Okay, so one thing before we really, so you guys can get kind of a all-encompassing understanding of our fund balances and where they are. I will say, these are newly audited numbers. And from our previous year to this year, there were adjustments to our fund balances. So, coincidentally, most of them helped us. The fund balance changes from the previous auditors to these auditors. And I did change the calculation. I was looking at it based off of revenue, monitoring, how much revenue, if we lost our revenue, how much, whatever. Now I changed the calculation to look at it from an expense standpoint, which in theory, it's the same thing. Our revenues equal our expenses. But if you look at actuals, our expenses are slightly lower than our revenues on most funds because we, typically don't overspend. So it helped our fund balance percentage. Now, whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's the kind of point I'm going to make to you guys tonight is, at this point, our fund balance amounts are arguably too high. So I wanted to present them to you so you had an understanding, before we make any future decisions on how to utilize those fund balances. But you can see general fund, I have the actual expenses for 3/31/25, which is what was just audited, and then the audited unrestricted balance, and then the fund balance percentage. So what this is saying is we have over a year's worth of reserves in our general fund at 105%. For the electric fund, we have 98% fund balance. Water, 124. But with water, you'll have to remember that we have the 9th Street project that's not completely done yet and would have hit in this fiscal year. So we do plan to use almost $1 million, I believe, of maybe not quite that much, but we do plan to use a pretty large chunk of our reserves in the water and some of it in the wastewater department for this current fiscal year that we're in. So those two are not as high as they appear. Parks Fund has a 30% fund balance, which is actually pretty high for the Parks Department right now. And then the CIP fund, we have 134%, but I am in the future slides proposing to use some of that.
That's not correct. How can you have 134 when your unrestricted balance is almost $400,000 less than the revenue for your expenses?
There's a reason. I just need to think about it for a second. Unrestricted balance. I'll just pull it up really quick. That would be easier. Let me check. So that's because 133 is the balance that we would have if we spent this year's budget and what I'm proposing. Without those two numbers, the fund balance is the 134. So the unaudited fund balance today is 691,301. And then 135%. But we have budgeted in this year's CIP the use of $208,000, which would bring us down to 94% reserves. And then later in the slides, I have a proposal for additional fund balance used for the sidewalk project, which brings us down to the 133, which is 26%.
That really.
It really should be based off the unaudited, it would be the 134. That is the unaudited number. And then the 691,000 is what should be in the 133. So, well, does that make sense, everybody?
Get a chance to see if there's any kind of norms.
Yep, sort of. I asked other cities and that's on the next slide. So the transportation fund has 342%. But that is mostly because, the transportation expenses are only 241, but that's the actual expenses. So that's with only spending for the CIP or the street plan and no sidewalk expenses. So our actuals didn't include any sidewalk expenses, but our reserves are higher, mostly because of the sidewalk project.
Department taking 500,000 from that deal.
We plan to take all of our reserves for the transportation fund. Okay, so GFOA's recommendation on fund balance, what they currently recommend is at least 2 months, this is for general fund, at least 2 months fund balance or about 17%. Right now we have 12.5 months. Some of the upcoming expected expenditures, one is the funding to pay for the I-70 bridge that we plan to use fund balance for. That was 43,000. And then potentially the sidewalk project, potentially. And then also another potential is something that we'll discuss a little bit later in the seat when we discuss the CIP. But with the street shed that we went out for bid for this year, we do not have enough money in our CIP to pay for it. The expenses are significantly higher than we anticipated. So I would propose use of general fund dollars to accomplish the street fund or street shed building to get that done. But we'll talk about that deeper in the CIP workshop. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, I have comparisons. So how I obtain these, we have a MCMA listserv. So I just reached out to all the city managers in the state that are associated with that listserv. So some of these cities might be kind of like, why did you ask that city? It's because they responded back to my question. So you can see here, and some of them didn't have like, this is our policy on paper. Some of it was just like, this is what our goal is. We don't have it documented, but I went ahead and put it in the policy column. And then not everyone gave me their actuals. And they just answered the question by answering what their policy is or what they target. So I put GFOAs in there at 17%. Pleasant Hills policy is only 8%, but they currently have 48% in reserves. Grandview's policy is 20, Nevada's 25, Brentwood's 25, Weldon Springs is 25. Government Finance Officials Association. It's like the MCMA or MML, but for finance directors, for government financing. I lost my place. Weldon Springs, 25%. University City, their policy's 18 and they currently have 42. Valley Park, their policy's 50%. Marshfield, Marshfield, I think is that city. 3 months is their policy. Oak Grove, their policy aligns with GFOA at 17% and they're currently at 35. Lake St. Louis, their policy is 30 and they're currently at 106. O'Fallon, their policy is 40, currently at 79. Wentzville, 25, currently at 70. St. Peter's, theirs aligns with GFOA at 17%, but they're currently at 50. St. Charles, 30% with 31% in actuals, and Sunset Hills is 50%. Knob Noster, 6 months, and West Plains, their actuals are at 17%. That's just for general funds. Okay, moving on to the sidewalk project. As you know, we've budgeted for the sidewalk project for 5 fiscal years now, kind of chasing our tails around how this project has evolved each and every year. Well, that's no different this year. It continuously evolves. At least now we know a final number. Finally, we have a final number total. We've gone out for bid. We know what their bid numbers were. We know what our construction engineering contract is. So we have an actual total budget number for sidewalks finally. But I wanted to show you how that evolved from our last year's budget to now this year's budget. So this is our last year's budget, 2025, 2026, how we budgeted for the project. You can see the grant income, the transfer from reserves, the general fund transfer at 600,000, the transfer from electric at 700,000, the street plan contribution, which is when we did the half of a street plan in 1 year to preserve. And then last year we adjusted the sales tax allocation up ever so slightly at the end of the budgeting process. So that increase went directly to this project at 14,239. So what was budgeted for is 2.697. If you remember or were around in April of 2025 last year, we had a conversation. That's when we were like, we know that the project is going to cost about $1 million more than the 2.69 that we have budgeted. So we really need to come up with an extra $1 million. When we had that conversation, we said we could use an additional 500,000 from the electric department. A large portion of the project is electric. And then we could also use the CIP fund. So at that time, the CIP fund had a lot more reserves than it does now. So now as our budget has evolved, I do not feel comfortable using $500,000 from the CIP's reserves, because as of right now in our past audit, their reserves are at the 691,301, which would leave the would bring us the 691 minus the 500 would be too much to use. It would deplete our CIP fund in its entirety. And our CIP fund is pretty critical right now because it's the one thing that's, allowing us to get the street shed, get equipment replacements and things like that for streets, admin, police, and parks. And especially with the parks fund needing quite a bit of money for the pool right now, it does not make sense to deplete the CIP fund. So what I'm proposing is on the next page. As you know, the grant income has not changed, unfortunately. It is still the exact same amount that it was in 2020. So 773 from the grant income. I've kind of pooled some line items together here, but our transportation reserves, that street contribution and that sales, 14,000 sales tax, I put those all into one line item. The reserve fund balance went up that 214,000. So we now have 838,000 of transportation reserves to use, which would bring that fund to zero. Since 2019, when we started this project, the plan was to use what we have in our reserves for the sidewalk project. What we had in the reserves has gone up, but the plan right now is still to use what we have in our reserves for the transfer for the sidewalk project. And then I'm proposing for the transfer from general fund to basically double that, to go from the 600,000 to 1,175,000. So if we were to do that, go from 600 to 1,175,000, with utilizing the 43,000 that we're paying to MoDOT for the bridge, plus the 1.1, plus an additional 250,000 for a street shed, which is not budgeted for anything, just theoretically. That is what we're proposing. That brings our general fund balance down to 63%.
And we've always said we wanted at least 50, right?
Correct. Our policy is 50. And 43,000 for the sign, the 1.175 for the sidewalks, and 254 additional funds for the street shed.
How much for the street shed?
To an additional 250,000. Well, that's already with 400,000. Yeah, we've also gone out for bid for the project twice, trying to get the amount reduced. So we're very sure of the number, unfortunately. Yeah, or start a construction business.
Kitty, need to do that years.
Okay, but moral to the story is that those three items would drop our reserves down to 63%. Then we have our contribution from the electric department. We have transferred 318, so this would be 318 plus the 800. But with those two, that still drops the reserves down to 84%, leaving still a healthy fund balance for the electric fund. So their balance minus the 800,000 is 4.7 million. So even after this, it'd still be 4.7. Their balance before the fund balance is reduced is 5.5 million. And then lastly, the transfer from CIP. So instead of 500,000 like we proposed in April 2025, we would propose 350,000, which still leaves us 26% fund balance in the CIP fund. So those items bring us to our total budget of 3,940,000 for the sidewalk project. Thoughts? Does anyone have any reservations about using that much of our general fund reserves? The only other option would be to kind of slide around general fund usage to electric usage. That's the only option.
So keeping two things in mind, if we don't use it in the right time, we have to pay money back. This sidewalk,
What do you mean?
or the grant.
If we don't do the sidewalk project?
And if we keep waiting, it's gonna get more.
Correct.
So we're kind of.
It's not right, we really have an option.
Yeah, we're 5 years of working this project that's over 5 years. I've been here for 5 years. it started, but well before me. So,
Well, there is an option, you can walk away, but then we have to continue to accept the liability of people getting hurt and things like that. That is an option.
yes. Technically, yes, but
Technically, yes, it's not a great option, but it is an option.
the other thing I wanted to say too with general fund, like the utility funds, if you look back at our budgets, the past at least 3 years, we've been budgeting to use reserves in these utility funds. Because it's responsible to use them to an extent, but we've also been trying to make some larger investments in our infrastructure for the utility funds. So we've been trying to budget for it, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 budgeted for use of reserves. And then, something happens and this project doesn't get done and then we don't end up using them. My point here is that we continuously budget to use reserves, and it doesn't always happen that we actually end up using them at the end of the year. But what we don't ever budget for is the use of general fund reserves. So, it's not, I feel confident in the fact of using the general fund reserves just because it's very rare that we use the general fund reserves in the first place. We're relatively conservative when it comes to using them. And I think it's for this reason. So when we do need it, and we need it in the sense that we have this decade-long project that is now it's here and it's loud and proud, it's time to, now's the opportunity to use the funds to get the project done and be done with it.
Good.
Thoughts?
I heard it do it.
Do it.
About one do it.
It's one of those, if you want to call it a once in a lifetime.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, one's for me. Okay.
I think it's very well thought.
I think Josh can happy with that.
Okay. All right, we'll switch over to our next meeting then.
We need, I need a much better. Let's take 5 minutes. If we can, exactly, 5 minutes.
Let's close this.
Workshop adjourned.
Okay.